Hello everybody and welcome back to Flying with Overkill F-18C for DCS World, and this is going to be the first remake of quite a few of them, as many of the procedures have changed since I previously did these. Now this video is a repost, as the sound in my initial post today was absolutely terrible and I needed to fix that. So I do apologize for those of you who had experienced that, but as you can tell, things have been resolved and I did it again. So, just to give you guys a heads up of things that are to come here, we're going to be going through quite a few of the old aircraft, or previous aircraft I've done, I shouldn't say old. We're going to be looking at the F-18 and a lot of the changes that have gone with it. Quite a few of the weapon systems, the procedures have changed. The startup procedure has changed a bit, as well as we're going to be taking a look at the F-16, the F-14. We're still not quite done with the AV-8B Harrier, but the problem with the Harrier is that the documentation, even from RASBAM, is not accurate to what the aircraft's current configuration is, meaning that the procedures that actually make XYZ work is not what's documented. So it makes it very difficult to put those videos out when I can't find accurate documentation that actually match up with what we see on the screen. So Chuck's tutorial guides, by the way, have been an amazing help. He's absolutely the best. If you guys are new to DCS or new to any of the aircraft, I highly suggest you check out his tutorial guides and then support him on his Patreon site, as he provides some documentation to his Patreon subscribers that are not available to the general public. Really fantastic work and really a great tool for those of us who are learning DCS. And I believe he's got a guide for every aircraft that's currently available for it. So check out the link in the description below to his guides listing, and then from there you can find his Patreon site as well. Okay, so moving on, today, like I said, we're going to be revisiting the startup, taxi, and takeoff procedures for the F-18. I was going to do just the startup and the initial, but we'll go through the takeoff as well, as it makes more sense to have it all in one video rather than bouncing back and forth. So without further ado, let's jump into the cockpit and get started. Alright, so jumping into the cockpit, we're going to get this bird started. Now, just FYI, these procedures I'm about to show you are my own, just the way that I do things. There are a few things I leave out, like the fire test and light test, things like that. I like to just get the aircraft started, get up, and battle some things out. And that's what my channel videos for DCS have always been about, is getting people who are new to the aircraft up and competing with the necessary knowledge to get up and moving. So, with that in mind, let's go ahead and get started. First thing we're going to do is come down to the right knee panel here, or right console. We're going to go to battery on. Come to the left side, we're going to find the APU. Right click to turn that on. While the APU is starting up, I'm going to bring my AMPCD on. Left DDI, right DDI, the HUD, and the UFC brightness. You can see now we have a green light on the APU indicating that it's ready, so we're going to come down to the engine crank switch and flip it over to the right with a right click. We're going to clear the flight stick out for a minute. We can clear the master caution. We're looking for 25% on the right engine RPM, and then we're going to hit right shift and home. That's going to move the throttle out of the cutoff position and into the idle position, which will induce fuel into the engine. To make sure you guys don't have any problems hearing me, the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and close the cockpit. Now you can see how the mouse sort of lights up here. We're going to do a left click and hold it, and the canopy will come down.
Roll left.
Make sure it rocks all the way forward.
Flight controls.
Listening to Betty there is normal. We want to hear her. That means that the bit test is running. To stop the flashing on the bit test, we can go ahead and hit the stop button, but I'm going to let it run for a minute. With the right engine started, what we're going to do now is come down to the bottom and start our INS alignment process. Gosh, I can't talk. And you can see here that we have CV, which is for carrier, and G&D, which is for ground. We're obviously on the ground, so we're going to switch it over to ground. If we were on boat, we would switch it to CV. You can see the quality alignment time here starting to flash at us. Now you have two different variations of alignment. We can do a full alignment, which takes approximately 8 minutes, or we can use what's called the stored heading, which takes about 90 seconds. As far as the simulation purposes go, I cannot tell you if there's any difference or degradation in quality that I have noticed in my time flying DCS. So we're going to use the stored heading method. Just giving that a quick click, and it'll get everything rolling here. Once this says OK on quality, we'll be good to switch it over to the next stage of alignment. While the alignment is processing, we can go ahead and start up the left engine. So we're going to come back to our crank switch and left click it, get it started, and we'll repeat the process. Again, looking for 25% on the RPMs. And this time we'll be using right, alt, and home. So there's the left engine coming alive. You can look down here. You can also turn on your lights. We have the position lights and we have our formation lights. You have a master light switch right here on the back end of the throttle. A little hard to see, but if I hit Lima or L on our keyboard, you can see that switch comes up. And this is a master switch for all external lights. So it will turn them all on or all off as long as they are powered on here. Okay, so if we come back outside for a second, take a peek, you can see the navigation lights on. You can see the beacon light up there at the top of the tail. And if I hit L, shuts them off, brings them back on. Okay. All right, so the next thing we have to deal with is our flight control system. So we're going to hit our menu button here, and we're going to go to FCS for flight control system. And you can see all these X's indicate that there's an error with the flight control surface. Now how we clear this on startup is we're going to come down here and you can see FCS reset. We're going to give that a tap. And you can see all those X's are now cleared. We can also press our master caution button twice. If it was illuminated, it looks like cleared on its own. And we can also push this button down here right at the top of it, which will set the takeoff trim, as you can see right here, takeoff trim push. Alright, the APU will shut itself off as it just did there on its own. We can come back here to the back of the panel here and turn our oxygen system on. Don't want anyone getting any hypoxia up there. We're going to hit the stop light here up on our bit page. I like to turn the moving map off, so I'm going to come right here to OSB 3 on the AMPCD, tap it once, tap it twice. And you can see we have a quality alignment and set OK. So now what we're going to do is we're going to come down here and switch it to IFA for in-flight alignment. Now you can see we have a position AINS. That means it's working with both the INS system and the GPS system available in this time frame. If the mission itself was set below the 1980s, this AINS may not be there. If that is the case, if you switch it over to IFA and you do not see both of these here, you need to come back to here and switch it to nav. Okay? And that will force it to only use the onboard INS system. Alright, coming down to the left knee panel here to prepare for taxi. We're going to turn our taxi light on. As we're on the ground, we're set our hook bypass up to field. Now we may have to do this again when it comes down to the approach. We're going to set our flaps to the half position with a right click. Make sure anti-skid is on when you are on the ground, and it is off at all times when you are on deck. Alright. Coming over to the right side here, we can unlock or uncage our standby ADI and leaving the horizon line centered. We're going to depress and hold the radar altimeter button. Oh, excuse me. Backwards. First set it to 200 feet if we're on the ground, 80 feet when over water. Meaning that if you're taking off from a carrier, you would set it to 80 feet. And then now we will depress and hold it. And green light means we're good to go, so we can release and continue on with the startup process. We're going to set our altimeter over to radar for takeoff. We can set our bingo fuel here. I'm going to set it to 3,000. That's what my squadron uses. Okay, so we got 3,000 on the bingo fuel. Next, we're going to come to the FCS on the bit page. We're going to give that a tap here. And while holding Y or the Yankee key on our keyboard, we're going to depress that. OSB number 5 here. And if we go outside, you can see the control services running through their test. And we'll wait for these to clear and test. You can see everything moving around here, and we are a go. So we can now come back to our main page here with the menu button. As far as setting up your DDIs, there are some people who believe there's a strict procedure, and there are some who, say it's preference. And I would say for simulation, definitely it's preference. That's just my personal thoughts on that. People are welcome to defer. So I tend to have my stores page up on the left side. And I'll typically use like my attack page for the radar on the right DDI. Then coming down over here, speaking of the radar, we'll switch it over to standby. I don't know why it is, every time I right click, it's going way too far. Anyway, so we want to make sure it's on standby during taxi so we don't melt anyone's brain. And let's see here, what else we got here? The harness tensioner we want to put in the forward position, and the ejection seat, as long as we are outside, like as we are here and safe, we want to make sure that it is armed. We do not arm the ejection seat inside of a hangar, as if for any reason there was a failure, well, I'm sure you guys can put together what happens there. Final step here is we'll come down and turn our RWR on. You can set your electronic countermeasures to the standby position, the bypass dispenser or countermeasure dispenser to on. And I believe our aircraft is ready for taxi. I always recommend doing a final sweep. Really, I mean, at the end of the day, you guys will start figuring out what's best for you and what works easiest for you guys. And it's just a real quick flow. Now, pitot heat, you can either turn this on before taxi or you can turn this on before takeoff. Typically, it's turned on, I believe, right before they take the runway. All right, as you need airflow going through it to cool the pitot tube. All right, so with that in mind, we are now ready to taxi out onto the runway. So from here, we'll release the parking brake and very gently apply some throttle. Once the aircraft is moving, you want to reduce the throttle input so she doesn't get away from you. Holding your pinky button on your HOTAS, or S as in Sierra on your keyboard, you can see on the HUD that says NWS High. This engages nose wheel steering a high range of motion. I believe it makes the nose wheel, or provides the nose wheel with the ability to steer up to 70 degrees of left to right axis. And the other thing that I just realized is we're going the wrong direction. This is not the way I would recommend taxiing to a runway, but for today, luckily, they gave us the airbase all to ourselves. Minus these KC-135s here. Or actually, it looks like just C-135s. I can't tell if they have a boom on them or not. While taxiing out to the runway, we can actually bring up our HSI page. If you prefer to have it on one of your DDIs instead of having to look down at the AMPCD. I suppose I could get on the taxi line here. Forgive the sloppy taxiing here. I'm really irritated about that previous video I posted. This is literally my second time doing this video in 2 hours, so I'm not sure what happened. Every time I power on my VR, even when I disable it, the recording software automatically switches to the virtual reality headset microphone. Every single time. And unfortunately today, I forgot that it did that. So this is a perfect example. Nose wheel steering to the high range of motion. You can see it brings it around rather quickly. Anyway, so yeah. I was rather frustrated by that. And the previous video went so well, and I didn't even bother to edit it. Like, it was just, I pieced it together and had it render it. And, well, that one bit me too. Always double check your work. I'm close here now. Make sure your pitot heat is on. Don't turn the aircraft like that. Be a little bit more gentle. You guys can tell what it's been a while since I've been in the Hornet. Shoot. Why does my view look weird? There we go. Little trick, when you know you're going to make a tight turn, start holding your nose wheel steering high button before the turn begins, and it makes it a lot easier to manage the input. And then keep it down until you've cleared your turn. And we'll stop the aircraft center line here. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is power up our engines to about 80%, give or take. Release the brakes. We're going to go to mill power, which is as fast as the aircraft can go without the use of afterburners. Let's get rolling. Autopilot button or paddle switch to disengage nose wheel steering. We're now going to max power. Looking for 150 knots. Rotating. I'm looking for 7 degrees of angle of attack. Positive rate, G on your keyboard for gear up. Flaps up above 240 knots. Sorry, that happened a little faster than I was anticipating. And then once you reach your climb out speed, pull your throttle off. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you start up, taxi, and take off in the F-18C Hornet. I hope you guys have found this video useful. There will be many others coming in as procedures have changed, so stand by for those. They won't necessarily be in any particular order. I'm just going for the ones that I found to be the most prudent. From here, we'll be going over to the TGP and then to some of the weapon delivery systems. All right, I hope you guys are all doing well. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. Ring the bell for notification of future content if you're enjoying the content. And I will see you guys in the next one.